Hi everybody, I'm Summer England, and today we're going to be talking about ADHD and writing. So to give you a really quick backstory on why I'm going to be starting this series. So last year on TikTok, I started telling a story about The Neighbor and I, which is a true retelling of how I fell in love with my neighbor. We are still together today, spoiler alert. Anyhow, from all of that storytelling on TikTok, I had multiple different literary agents reach out to me asking if I wanted to make it into a book. I ended up getting an agent through that process for a book that I had not yet written, and I had never written anything full-length in my life. I have 2 master's degrees in Shakespeare performance, so I've written multiple theses. Because I am an actor and I have also worked as a professor, I am pretty familiar with storytelling, but I have never written anything full length. However, I was now contracted with a literary agent, and I set out to first write a rom-com memoir, which ended up not going anywhere yet. But basically, last year, I sat down to write my first chapter, and then I realized, oh my God, my ADHD is going to make this absolutely impossible. And so I spent the last year meticulously curating my life in such a way that I was going to be able to write and not hate my brain whilst doing so. And so here I am a year later, and I have set up a writing routine, and I had a lot of tips and things that I curated throughout the process that really helped me. And so I am going to share this with you. And just a quick note, I am not a medical professional. ADHD is different in every other person. I also have different neurodivergencies that converge and such. So some of these might not be helpful to you. Some of these may be super helpful for you, but this is just what has helped me, and I'm going to be sharing it with you. All right, let's get into it. First and foremost, acknowledge that ADHD is your writing partner. It absolutely is going to be a co-writer with you, if not the main writer. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it took me a long time to be able to realize that I'm going to have to consider my ADHD to be a superpower and not the obstacle in which I have to get over for me to tell the story, because my brain is my brain. There is no getting away from my brain. My brain is what got me into writing a book anyhow, was because the way my brain processes the world is how I tell stories, and that is what got me my literary agent and all of this different stuff, and I have to be able to acknowledge that that's not inherently a bad thing. So basically, one of the ways in which I do that, I tend towards ADHD hyperfocus, which is a pretty good thing sometimes when it comes to sitting down to write a book, because I can really hyperfocus on one thing. But sometimes it's like when you're looking at a star in the sky and then you're able to see all of these other stars around it. And sometimes that's how writing is for me, which is exactly what happened in National Novel Writing Month. So I was sitting down in National Novel Writing Month, and I was writing my rom-com memoir, which is what I was originally sort of contracted with my literary agent to do so. And in the back of my mind, I had this other project, this cozy fantasy. And I was like, you know what? I need to stop ignoring my ADHD and just let it go. Because I would try to write, and then I would get distracted by this other story. And I would try to write, and then I would get distracted by this other story. And so I was like, you know what? There is no sense in trying to ignore this anymore. I'm just going to let my brain do it and tell my brain, hey, that's great. I'm going to do this, instead of trying to ignore my brain or have really bad conversations with my brain of like, I'm giving into this part of my brain or things. But I was like, okay, great. So that's what you want to do? Great. And so I did that, and I ended up getting 15,000 words of this other novel that I had no intention of setting out to write. And I only was able to write it because of the way that my brain was working at the time, that I was working on one project and I kept getting distracted by this other. And that other project, that ADHD side project during National Novel Writing Month, is what I just finished 90,000 words of a few days ago. So again, ADHD is your writing companion, and that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it can feel like a hurdle, but everything in life, whether you have ADHD or not, there's always going to be obstacles in between you and doing the thing you want to do. But if it's part of your brain, so treat it kindly when you can, and give yourself grace when you can, as much as possible. I know it's difficult. Second up is a routine. So one thing that I have learned during this writing process, and also that I've tried to curate my entire life, is figuring out how my brain works and when it is functioning at different parts of the day. So basically, I know that my brain works best in the morning. And by works best, I mean that I'm able to focus the best in the morning. That is when I have the most energy. That is when I feel the best. As the day keeps going, I start sort of disintegrating. My focus starts disintegrating, because that's just not when my brain likes to be fully at capacity, and that's okay. For writing purposes, and even when I was in high school and in college, I noticed that I was able to get the most amount of work done and had the most joy in doing the work, which I think is the key, in the morning, because that's when my brain was just at 100%. And so I would say part of being able to score a good writing routine, if you have ADHD, is figuring out what pockets of the day that your brain might feel the best. But getting to know your brain and building a relationship with your brain and how it's functioning, I think, is something that really helped me to be able to fit into a routine that was sustainable, maintainable, and overall enjoyable. Once I established, okay, I'm always going to be writing in the morning, which was sometimes somewhat of a frustrating process to get there, because before I was trying to write in the afternoon and I just was not getting any words done, and I just felt like I was really incapable and not able to like write a full-length book, especially last year when I first set out to write it, because I just didn't have enough data about what my brain needed to be doing and what was working best for it, and I was fighting against it instead of trying to figure out ways to work alongside it. Again, that goes back to acknowledging ADHD as my writing partner. Anyhow, once I established that routine of getting up in the morning and writing, I also tried to set different goals for myself, whether it be a word count or I just want to sit down and write this chapter, or I have this scene that I want to get to, because something that really helps me in my life, and I've always been this type of person, is I am addicted to goals. I love a goal, and my brain operates really well under there. Sometimes that's not for everybody. Sometimes setting out to be like, oh God, 2,000 words a day is extremely daunting. I do not like that. Then don't do that. I like it. I like being able to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to, instead of a word count, I usually do scenes of I want to get to the end of this beat, or I want to get to the end of this chapter, and that helps sort of take the word percentage away, because sometimes feelings of failure can creep in. Anyways, I do the routine in the morning, and then I try to set a writing goal for myself, whether that's words or whether that's writing to the end of a scene or whether it's a chapter, and that has been really, really helpful for me. Now let's get into the writing space. So something that has always been true for me is the place that I am living and the place that I am existing in has to help my brain exist. One of the things that I have figured out is the space in which I write in is really, really important for me, again, to stay present in the moment and for my brain to enjoy what it is doing. And so I would go to the local library and I would write at a little desk in the corner in the children's section, because it was sort of quiet but lively, and that's where I would write. And then over the summer, I was able to rent a house, and I'm still in that house, and it ended up having a little kind of cozy room that I made into an office space. And I have just filled this office with things that I like to look at. A lot of my watercolors behind me, notebooks, my favorite books, and different little odds and bits. I don't necessarily care what it looks like to the outside eye. Everything in here makes my brain happy, like this tiny toaster man. And that was really important for me, especially once I sat down to write my cozy fantasy novel and I really got into world building and all of these things. Was I wanted my world to also feel fantastical and whimsical, because that's what brings me a lot of joy. And again, a lot of the ways in which I'm able to work with and work within and work alongside of my ADHD is making sure that the things that I'm doing and what I'm asking my brain to do does have joy within it. So it doesn't feel like I am being spread thin, but I am having a great time doing something that I love. Something that also really helps me in my writing space is I have a playlist, and I will link it below. It is on YouTube. It is called my Writing Tunes playlist. And it is basically ambient sounds, lo-fi beats of fire crackling, pages turning, and things, because writing can often be a very solitary experience. And so I like to feel and be reminded that there is a world around me, so that I don't get so far into my hyper-focus ADHD hole that I have difficulty coming out of it, or I feel very overstimulated for the rest of the day. And so those writing tunes really help me just to sort of keep pace and keep my body and my brain tethered to here and to now. Again, goes back to joy, it goes back to things that I like to work with and making my brain happy and figuring out what makes my brain happy, and writing tunes does that. Now let's get into my favorite ADHD friendly office supplies. I love typing on my laptop, but I love even more typing on my keyboard. So last year, again, when I began this writing journey, I knew that I didn't necessarily have an office of my own, but I did want like a writing setup that felt like my own. And it also, I get very attached to inanimate objects. So when I ordered this keyboard, I think it's like $40 on Amazon. I'll link my Amazon storefront down here because I have all of the office supplies linked on there if you would like to. I knew that, okay, I'm gonna get this keyboard and this is what I'm gonna write my first book on. Or I'm gonna cut my teeth trying to write a book, and then I'll end up writing a whole other book that I never would have imagined I would have written in my life. So I have my keyboard, I have this little toaster. I also have this swivel chair, because one thing about me is my body always needs to be staying in motion. Being able to have a chair that swivels is literally a game changer. I cannot tell you how much of a game changer this is. Now, I have a very meager acting salary. These are all layered. I am showing you a year's worth of things that I have slowly collected over time. This was not one big sweep of, oh, I've got $400 extra and I'm going to spend it on all of this office supplies, because I realized that that is a huge investment and something that I could not have done at all. It was an overtime accumulation of pieces. My knitting, come back. Also, out of frame, I have a walking treadmill. Now, I do not have a standing desk whatsoever. I absolutely just stack my Shakespeare tomes on top of each other, set my laptop on top of that, and then put my treadmill under my desk, and it's probably not the safest setup in the world, but you know what? We got to do what we got to do. I am able to write for longer periods of time when I'm on my walking treadmill, just because my body is so focused on one foot in front of the other that I'm not thinking about other things. It sort of takes the edge off of some of my anxiety and the ADHD pressings and such. Which brings me to one of my favorite bits of office supply is my timer. Don't use digital timers for no other reason than I just don't like them. This is a really simple timer. And this is how I do my writing sprints. When I first sat down to write, this time last year, almost exactly, I did not set a time for myself. I had absolutely zero boundaries, and I didn't go into it with a good mindset, because I should have gone into it of, I'm going to collect data about how I am as a writer. This is a whole new era and aspect of myself I don't know yet, and I just need to build a relationship with this summer and how my brain works. I did not do that. It took me a lot of different mistakes to get to the point where I'm just like, I just need to build a relationship with my brain. And one of those is I do need to set timers for myself, because one, writing sprints, I get really excited, again, because I'm a goal-based person, but two, I can overdo it and I will write for too long, or I will not give myself enough breaks, or I won't eat, or so the timer really helps bring me out of it. And I have really strict boundaries with myself of, once that timer goes off, I do something. Now, this also does a dual purpose, because whenever I have to clean or whenever I have to do laundry, I will set this timer and then I will go change the laundry, or I will do something, another physical task that I was sort of hyper focused on for that morning of like, oh gosh, I need to make my bed, I need to do my sheets, I need to XYZ. And so I set the timer, and every time this goes off, I do the other thing that I wanted to do that day. So it kind of, again, is not me giving in to my ADHD, which is something I've really had to reframe for myself. But I'm like, oh yes, I need to do that. My brain is telling me, hey, you've got these things to do. So I'm going to try to do that, right? I'm going to set this timer, not only give myself a break from writing, but also do the other things that I wanted to do or that I feel a pressing need to do, and give myself space to do all of it and stretch and eat and then go back. And that has been really successful for me. And again, I really enjoy it, which is the key. I think writing with ADHD and autism and OCD, all of which are happening in my brain all at the same time. And that has really helped me. And it's really helped me avoid burnout as well, because once I've set that timer 3 or 4 times, then there's no more writing for the day. If I let myself get ADHD burned out, then I am overstimulated in my real life for the rest of the day. I'm automatically touched out. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to see my friends. I don't want to talk to people I love, because my brain is just at max capacity. If I have a superpower, it is that I can hyper-focus myself into burnout every single day of my life. So this timer really, really helps me, and it's a fun color. Again, it's another thing that I really like to look at. So I hope this has been helpful. This is just the beginning of the series of ADHD and writing tips. It'll get more specific as we go along. ADHD and writing fantasy worlds, ADHD and writing smutty scenes, ADHD and different things I've learned along the way as a new writer, and absolutely kind of bringing you into this very vulnerable world, which is good for me because I struggle being vulnerable because I'm a Virgo and an eldest daughter and stuff like that. So I will be bringing you along with this journey, and I hope that any of these tips are helpful. Let me know if there would be anything that you have pressing questions about, and I'm really excited to do this series with you all. I'm really super passionate about writing and mental health as your co-writers, and I'm excited to do this. Have a great day.